Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is easily one of the best mangas and anime of all time. Hailed by IMDb's ratings and the opinions of millions of anime watchers and manga readers worldwide, this story is Hiromu Arakawa's masterpiece. Although the manga had an anime in 2003, the story was retold in the visual format in 2009 after the release of all the chapters. As a result, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is more faithful to the source material through and through. And with this, we also get to come across the real villain of the show, aka Father. The 2003 Fullmetal Alchemist was animated during a time when the original villain was only foreshadowed in the manga. As a result, the anime gave us antagonists who are not canon to the story. This is what makes Brotherhood all the more interesting, considering we get to have a whole new bad guy within the world of alchemy and Philosopher's Stones. The oldest homunculus of all and the one who introduced alchemy to the masses, Father, is at the center of every messed up thing that is going on in the story. And so far, everyone has been his puppet while having little to no knowledge about the truth of things. But this is what today's video is about, as we are going to take a trip down the memory lane of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, bringing everything about Father into the light once again. Before we get into the content, we would like to make a very small request to our viewers. Please subscribe to our channel, like and comment on our videos, and press the bell icon to be notified whenever we upload new content. We'd be grateful to you, and we hope to bring you the best nerdy content in the future. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. He's the leader of the embodiment of sin. Father's introduction in Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. Father makes his first appearance in the pilot episode of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. However, it is more of a foreshadowing and far from being a prominent debut. We know that Edward and Alphonse Elric are trying to get their hands on the fabled Philosopher's Stone to restore their bodies, specifically Alphonse's. Edward, more popularly known as the Fullmetal Alchemist, becomes the state alchemist and part of the military of his country to access the necessary resources required to get closer to the Philosopher's Stone. However, their very first mission in Central City throws a curveball at them that shows how there's something more sinister bubbling underneath all the fables of the stone and the righteous military of a mistress. This happens when Ed and Al are made to partake in a manhunt for a former state alchemist named Isaac the Freezer. In the military hierarchy, Fyodor Bradley sits on top of the pyramid. Naturally, all the state alchemists must abide by his orders. However, Isaac had uncovered a truth about the country's military and government, causing him to work alongside an anti-establishment movement following the atrocities committed in the Ishvalan Civil War. Using his liquid-based alchemy, Isaac the Freezer tries to destroy Central, which is the capital and heart of all military and government activities in Amestris. Having created several transmutation circles around the city, Isaac activates them all at once after being cornered by the Elric brothers in an alley. And as he does it, he makes it a point to mention how the brothers are acting as dogs of the military while being oblivious to who they are serving. Meanwhile, Ed and Al are shocked to see a simultaneous alchemic reaction like that, making them aware of the involvement of a Philosopher's Stone in the reaction. However, the more interesting part happens only for a split second when we get to see the face of a man as the alchemic reactions start to take place. At this point, the Elric brothers do not see this, obviously, and only the viewers are made aware of this mysterious man. As you may already know, this man is the Father, who is the MVP of today's video. But who is he, and why are we made to see him? Of course, these questions are answered in due time. Cut to episode 14 of the 2009 series, and we finally get to see the man properly. By this time, the viewers or the readers have been introduced to some of the homunculus, namely lust, greed, gluttony, and envy. Episode 14 reveals another homunculus existing deep within the military's ranks, and this homunculus is none other than Fyodor Bradley himself, who represents the deadly sin of wrath. Greed and wrath clash against one another while Greed is oblivious to Bradley being a homunculus. After Greed's loss in the duel, he is taken to an underground cavity within Central City, where we get to see the other homunculi, Sans, Pride, and Sloth. While Greed is restrained and made to dangle mid-air, Wrath tells the others about how Izumi Curtis and the Elric brothers are capable of being worthy sacrifices for their future plan. Greed recognizes the other homunculi as his siblings and insults Envy. Soon we get to see their father, who is quite evidently the father we are talking about today. He questions Greed about his betrayal, and the latter's answer turns out to be simple. Because Greed represents the deadly sin of greed, sticking by his father to fuel his plan goes against his nature, preventing him from obtaining his personal desires. But he also asks Father to not be surprised, since he accuses him of making him that way. way. He says, "That's how you gave me life, and that's the way I've lived." Right off the bat, this tells us that these homunculi are not exactly biological children of Father in the way we understand biological children. You can't really ensure that your child has particular personality traits, and you don't really make them to be a certain way. Father asks Greed if he will work for him again, and staying true to his vice, Greed goes against it. He says that he will never return to Father willingly, making his existence practically useless for the latter. The truth is, Father, although calm and relaxed in his demeanor, hopes to attain something similar to godhood. He rose up to his current position over centuries and created the homunculi using the Philosopher's Stone. Each homunculus has a part of Father's soul, and each part represents one of the 7 deadly sins. This also removes the vices that make a man human from Father, making him a husk of a person with 0 emotional range. With Greed standing against him, Father drops him into a vat of lava, melting him down to this Philosopher's Stone and absorbing it into himself once again. The face of a father, but the work of a devil. Father's involvement with the homunculi reveals a dark secret of the world's past. To understand the machinations of Father's plan better, we need a quick history lesson on the alchemy prevalent in Amistris and, by extension, the alkahestry prevalent in the eastern nation of Xing. In the 18th episode of the show, Ed travels to the ruins of Xerxes, where he talks to Lin's bodyguard Fu about the place. Here, it is revealed that Xerxes is the country connected to the origins of both alchemy and alkahestry. The once glorious country of Xerxes witnessed the collapse of its civilization, which happened overnight due to very mysterious reasons. However, there went on to be fabled legends about a traveler from the east and a traveler from the west originating from Xerxes. While the former was responsible for introducing alchemy to the western world, the latter introduced alkahestry to the eastern world. The traveler from the east being referred to here is originally Father, while the traveler from the west is actually the father of the Elric brothers, Van Hohenheim, but more on that later. During the conversation with Fu, Edward also goes on to spot the tattered remains of a transmutation circle in the ruins, making him, and by extension the viewers and the readers, even more curious about what is going on. In alchemy, there is the law of equivalent exchange, which states that to get something, you need to give something of equal value in return. This exchange takes place to and from the metaphorical gate of alchemy, or the gate of truth, which means that this exchange is somewhat of a gate toll. This gate also does not come without its gatekeeper, the truth. Truth here has been given an almost physical manifestation to personify it, although its face continues to be pretty vague. Father wanted to bypass this toll by creating a gate of his own. This was also why he created Gluttony, whose internal body was basically an imperfect replica of the Gate of Truth. Edward learns about it after being consumed by Gluttony alongside Ling, where they have to face Envy, who assumes his original, monstrous form. Envy's form vividly depicts how he is comprised of several helpless souls from Xerxes, as they bulge out of his body, crying for help. Although he admits that there is no way out of Gluttony's body, Ed notices the ruins of Xerxes, specifically the missing parts of the transmutation circle from the original ruins he had visited. Envy's presence also denotes the presence of a Philosopher's Stone, which means that they can all work together to escape this realm, and so they do, as they collect the pieces of the mural which reveals itself to be a human transmutation circle, which is actually the circle Ed and Izumi had previously made to bring back Trisha Elric and Izumi's stillborn son. Using this circle also means that Ed will have to break alchemy's greatest taboo once again. Deducing the murals helps Edward understand that this human transmutation circle was probably used for the entire population of Xerxes, turning them into a Philosopher's Stone. Doing so would help the doers surpass God, making Edward think that Father wants to recreate the same incident in Amistris. Although Envy shrugs off his assumptions, we know that Ed is bang on with this one. Meanwhile, Alphonse is taken to Father by Gluttony himself. It all falls into place simultaneously as the moment Alphonse arrives in front of Father, Ed, Ling, and Envy break out of Gluttony's body and stand in front of the big bad guy himself. Ed and Alphonse are reunited, and while Al seems to have a broken off arm from his armor, Ed's arm and ribs face a similar fate with the bones being broken. As the Elric brothers notice Father, they are shocked by his face because he looks almost exactly like their father, Hohenheim. However, Father is soon revealed to be different from Hohenheim, but he surprisingly knows the person the brothers are referring to. In fact, he's intrigued after learning that Ed and Al are the sons of Hohenheim. In the 27th episode of the show, we actually get to see Hohenheim and Father together during an outdoor party. At first, Father is not present, and Hohenheim is being offered drinks by Pinnacle Rockbell, who wants him to loosen up and enjoy. Here, it is revealed how Amistris always seems to be at war and has been a part of several conflicts since King Bradley's takeover. Soon, Pinnacle leaves Hohenheim's side to partake in the festivities of the campfire dance, while Father appears tears beside the man. He says, "Humans are fragile, aren't they? They cower at the darkness and don't try to stand up to it, and instead, they try to forget it temporarily and try to escape from reality. Humans are such weak creatures. Well, let's have them be of some use to us as a precious resource." This doppelganger of Hohenheim's, minus the glasses and plus some wrinkles, is none other than Father himself, and it is very evident that the two know each other well enough, arousing more questions in the minds of the viewers. Back to the present, Father heals Ed and Al's broken bodies after learning that they are the sons of Hohenheim. What surprises the brothers, however, is how Father performs alchemy without partaking in any equivalent exchange at all. Although Father is made to appear slightly comical in this scene, maybe because greed was back in his body, he soon goes back to his more nonchalant form that brims with apathy. Ling accuses Father of being evil like the Homunculi, who treat humans with the utmost evil intentions. In reality, however, Father does not even care enough about humans to hate them. He sees them as insects, whose deaths do not bother him, kind of how the deaths of ants do not bother humans. This is exactly why he had referred to humans as nothing but a useful resource to Hohenheim. Around this time, the Elric brothers also begin to understand how Father is the root cause behind the creation of the Homunculi and the nefarious plots taking place within a mistress. Previously, King Bradley had confessed to Roy Mustang that the country was created in the first place to fuel Father's plan. The Homunculi always had a mistress under their grasp, which meant that the people, and by extension, the military of a mistress, were nothing but puppets. This was also the reason behind the country being so military and war-centric, especially since King Bradley became Führer. The Elric brothers try to attack Father, but not only do they have no effect on him, Father also attacks them with alchemy without using a single muscle, and when he does use a visible transmutation, it cancels the alchemy of the Elrics. He also takes great interest in Ling and turns him into the homunculus Greed. Meanwhile, Mei Chang and Scar break into the chamber where the former senses that Father is not a human. Scar is attacked by Gluttony, who knows that Father's transmutation prevents alchemy in this area, but he is soon taken aback when Scar's decomposition technique proves itself to work. In fact, Mei's alkahestry works so well because alkahestry uses the Earth's chi to channel itself, while Father's transmutation does not hinder. By extension, the decomposition ability possessed by Scar is also a type of reverse transmutation circle with its roots in alkahestry, which allows him to use it in this situation. Throughout Father's appearance in the chamber, we see his body being connected to several pipes as he sits on a stone throne. However, following the events of his first encounter with the Elric brothers, his interactions with others slowly reduce to just him musing over his plans. The original sinner and progenitor of the seven sins, Father's creation and fall of Xerxes. And finally, we come to one of the most important parts of today's video as we go back to the very beginning of Father's origin. Before having a seemingly human body or any proper physical form at all, Father was no father. He was referred to as the dwarf in the flask, as he was nothing but a tiny mass of black goo with an eye and tiny tendrils contained within a flask. Originally, this being was part of an existence within the Gate of Truth, or the Gate of Alchemy, borrowing its essence from the eye that we often get to see inside the gate. This proves Mei's theory about Father not being human correct. This being contained a portion of the knowledge held by the Gate of Truth, and unlike the others, it could exist in the physical realm. We see him in the city of Xerxes, which has an advanced civilization. Being a non-human entity with knowledge and some humanoid characteristics in terms of personality, the people of Xerxes deemed him to be the first homunculus. The knowledgeable sentient creature found a companion in Slave 23 as it bonded with him over being enslaved. He named his new friend Van Hohenheim and shared some of his knowledge on alchemy with him, hoping to use his help in the future. Due to its physical condition, the dwarf in the flask, despite knowing alchemy, could not perform it, which is why he needed Hohenheim's help. Throughout everything, though, Hohenheim continued to be oblivious to the entity's true intentions and ambitions. As time went by, the dwarf in the flask had to acknowledge his nature as one of a kind, being the only homunculus in existence. As cool as it may sound, it made the entity feel singled out, alienated, and alone in a world full of humans who shared emotional support with one another, bonding over their issues and experiencing emotions that brought them closer. Out of spite, or in simpler terms, sheer pettiness, the now lonely entity, who lost his self-esteem and confidence, decided to outdo and trample on the human race by becoming superior to God. But to become a god from a black mass within a flask was far from an easy task. At the same time, the king of Xerxes was much like Father himself. He wanted the secrets of immortality, although he did not want or rather even think of achieving the level of godhood that the dwarf in the flask desired. This king wanted the entity to reveal the secrets of immortality to him, and the dwarf took full advantage of the king's lack of knowledge when it came to alchemy. Throughout it all, however, Hohenheim became a scapegoat without having a clue about what he was doing. The dwarf called for the creation of a gigantic transmutation circle in Xerxes, and instructed the people to create bloodshed at some of the circle's specific nodes. He made Hohenheim stand at the transmutation circle's center, using his blood and the blood of the king to activate the circle. He claimed that it would make the king immortal, but obviously that was a big, fat lie. In reality, it would sacrifice all the souls in Xerxes, barring that of Hohenheim's and his own, and make the very first Philosopher's Stone. As the transmutation opened the Gate of Truth, the dwarf in the flask acquired immortal bodies for both himself and Hohenheim, with each body being composed of thousands of souls in Xerxes, which would keep them alive. Seeing how he was unwillingly made to be a part of a nefarious plot and a horrific act, Hohenheim parted ways with the first homunculus ever, while the latter acquired an appearance similar to that of Hohenheim's. The homunculus relocated to a patch of land to the west of the world and taught its people alchemy, gaining the title of the Philosopher of the East. He then placed himself underneath the country's land, creating a central command where his body was connected with several pipes. This ensured that the teachings of his alchemy could never be used against him because he channeled the tectonic energy present. This meant that the alchemy in this country would be powered by the souls of Xerxes in the homunculus's body. As you can already guess, this country went on to be a mistress. It was literally founded by Father to carry out his plan, which is what King Bradley referred to when he mentioned the origin of a mistress to Roy Mustang. Somewhere down the line, the homunculus got rid of all 7 vices within himself, creating the 7 homunculi using the Philosopher's Stone and parts of his soul. Despite his distaste towards the feeble human race, he was envious of them, and despite craving something beyond godhood, the homunculus created the other homunculi to have something that resembled a family, which is also why he made them refer to him as Father. Father and the homunculi formed the puppet government of Amestris, using which they began to wage war and take over nearby lands. A large transmutation circle was created underneath the country's land, and all the bloodshed and wars were conducted on the transmutation circle's nodes. In fact, during the Ishvalan War, Envy appeared as Roy Mustang and killed several Ishvalans, a sin that the original Roy got court-martialed for despite standing against what the military wanted. Father wanted to recreate the tragedy at Xerxes in Amestris, hoping to use the souls of the people in this country to absorb God. However, this could not be achieved without an eclipse, which could only be attained by sacrificing 5 alchemists who had accessed the Gate of Truth. This is why he considered the likes of the Elric brothers to be valuable sacrifices who could not be killed. After creating the homunculi, and with the country wrapped around his fingers, Father still tied all the loose ends to prevent people from finding out the truth. Although the alchemists in the country knew and understood how the homunculi worked, the concept was deemed to be a fable and a fantasy. In fact, the government forbade any research on this topic alongside the attempt to perform human transmutation. The Promised Day of Ascendance, Father's True Desire. Every event in the history of Amestris has been conducted by Father to put his plan into motion, and more recently, the homunculus Sloth has dug a gigantic underground tunnel for Father's transmutation circle. Every war and bloodshed has been conducted on specific days and points within the circle, and having done everything, he is now only left with sacrificing the people who have seen the Gate of Truth. In the 42nd episode of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, May reveals how Scar's brother had discovered the existence of the transmutation circle within Amestris. If you think about the pilot episode, it becomes clear that Isaac the Freezer probably knew about this as well, which is why he went against the military, and which is why we saw Father for a second when Isaac instigated the transmutations. Throughout these 400 years, Father has been preparing for the infamous Promised Day. While many have no clue about what is going to happen, the same cannot be said for Hohenheim, who had asked Alphonse to keep an eye on the sky. Ling, who shares his body with Greed, has also learned about the Promised Day from the soul of the homunculus. He relays the message to Edward Elric, telling him that Father intends to open the Gate of Truth on that day. However, this also means that Ed and Al can get their bodies back as a result of the gate's activation. Before Ling can reveal more, Greed takes over the body once again, but on the bright side, Greed does not exactly side with his so-called family, primarily because he will not want to be a part of an organization where he is not the boss. Roy Mustang goes on to learn about the Promised Day, which is set to occur in the spring of 1915, that is, the next year, on the day of the solar eclipse. Although everyone tries to stop Father's plan, things work out smoothly for our bad guy, who not only gets Ed, Al, Izumi, and Hohenheim to act as his sacrifice, but also makes Pride force Roy Mustang into opening the Gate of Truth and becoming the 5th sacrifice for the ritual. Through his machinations, he gets all 5 of them at the center of a circle around the time the eclipse reaches its peak. A Mad Eye's last stand. How Father becomes a god and then dies a demon's death. When Father activates the nationwide transmutation circle, it draws in the souls of the people in Amestris to the circle's center, forcing open the gate. Father also opens the gate of the heavens, thus becoming God in a way. Pulling the energy from both gates, Father absorbs the souls of the 50 million people in Amestris, barring the 5 human sacrifices in the center and those hiding under the ground, such as Riza Hawkeye, Scar, Mei Chang, Greed, and King Bradley. The entire ritual allows Father to unlock the full potential of alchemy, making him stronger than God. And, as it happens, Father gains a new form, appearing as a younger Hohenheim who is powerful enough to create many suns in his hands. Because of all the sacrifices, Father has managed to absorb the gate's entity, which was his plan all along. This has helped him to become the perfect being, allowing him to defy all natural order and do anything and everything under the sky. This also means that he is now invincible, with God imprisoned within his body. However, Van Hohenheim puts a countermeasure into place by merging the souls from Xerxes in his body into the earth. With the moon's shadow as a circle, Hohenheim releases the souls of the people from Amestris from Father's body, returning them to their human bodies. This does not take away Father's godly powers, but it does leave him with a body vulnerable to attacks, especially with powers that his body now cannot hold. Father had previously used a seal on Amestri and alchemy to prevent people from fighting back, but due to Scar's brother's research, Scar is able to cancel the seal, allowing the Elric brothers, Roy Mustang, and Izumi Curtis to fight to their fullest potential. As everyone begins to fight against him, Father's body visibly deteriorates due to the strain. What begins with his veins popping out and his skin losing color soon turns into his appearance losing any speck of humanity at all. Not only is he beaten senseless by Edward Elric with help from the military, he is truly compromised when Greed joins the party. Greed punches Father in the face, which Father tries to use to his advantage by absorbing the Philosopher's Stone. But Greed knows Father will pull this move, which is why he gets closer to him, hoping to drain his god energy. Greed is aided by Edward and Izumi, and the volley of physical attacks ends with Father toppling to the ground and releasing a massive energy burst. He rushes to Ed to drain his soul, while Ed cannot move due to him being pinned to the spot by rubble. Soon, Al saves the day as he exchanges himself for Ed's arm, allowing Ed to save himself while he disappears in the process. But it only acts as an incentive for Ed to work harder and bring Al back. As a result, Ed thwarts Father with a vicious barrage of attacks and depletes his stone. At the verge of defeat, Father lunges at Ling to drain the Philosopher's Stone that created Greed. However, as he does so, Father's arm turns carbon gray. He wants to replicate Greed's ultimate shield, but since Greed stands against Father, he transmutates the being into a vulnerable material, making it easier for the others to kill him. Once again, Father is appalled by Greed's treachery, as he is now made of the weakest carbon imaginable. As a result, Father starts to crumble under his own weight, making him destroy Greed's soul out of spite. However, Ed arrives and punches a hole in Father's chest, releasing the Xerxian souls within him, and avenging Greed's death in the process. With his body now drained, God comes out from Father's body and grabs him as the latter whines about never being able to attain his desires and by extension, his freedom. Soon, he disintegrates and appears in front of God before the gate in his original form. Father wants to know why God did not accept him as his vessel, and God tells him it is because he never believed in himself. Here, Father searches for the origin of God's voice and finds the faceless entity called Truth, who mocks him for stealing knowledge to be a god because it only made him a thief. Finally, Father gets cursed with the worst despair of all, as the gates open, grabbing him and sucking him back into the abyss he had come from. Marvelous verdict! In a way, Father's end was brought about by the 2 different types of greed. The greed he purged out of himself, creating the homunculus who turned him into carbon, and the greed that made him relentlessly seek godhood while being nothing but a thief who went against the natural order. But what do you guys think about Father and FMA in general? Let us know in the comments section down below, and we'll see you in the next video. With that, today's video comes to an end. What did you think of Father? Did you enjoy this video? If so, then don't forget to like and comment on this video. Until then, goodbye, and have a marvelous day.